This is Research Like a Pro, episode 314, BanyanDNA. Welcome to Research Like a Pro, a genealogy podcast about taking your research to the next level, hosted by Nicole Dyer and Diana Elder, accredited genealogist professional. Diana and Nicole are the mother-daughter team at FamilyLocket.com and the authors of Research Like a Pro, a genealogist guide. With Robin Worthland, they also co-authored the companion volume, Research Like a Pro with DNA. Join Diana and Nicole as they discuss how to stay organized, make progress in their research, and solve difficult cases. Let's go! Today's episode is sponsored by newspapers.com. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Research Like a Pro.
Hi, Nicole. How are you?
Really well. I've been enjoying reading the DNA study group reports and giving feedback on those.
Oh, wonderful. I've been doing the same thing. What have you been discovering?
It's just been great to see how each person has their own unique style. One thing I loved was when one of the study group members started with one objective, found a cluster of DNA matches, started building a tree of one of the matches, and then found that it actually led to solve a different brick wall than the one she was focusing on, but on the same line. So she kind of switched gears and went ahead and wrote the report about that instead. And it was really, really exciting to see kind of this serendipitous solution to a brick wall.
That's really interesting. It makes me think that when we discover more about our DNA matches, it can help us on lots of our different family lines.
Right? I think we all have our favorite projects that we're thinking we want to solve. And then sometimes we don't realize that we have these matches that could solve other problems in our tree.
Right. Oh, that's great. Well, for announcements today, we have our Airtable guides available for anyone listening who really wants to get started with Airtable and needs a little bit of a quick start. We have Airtable Research Logs for Genealogy, the second edition, and the companion guide, Tracking DNA Matches with Airtable. We are looking forward to our Research Like a Pro webinar series for July, which will be held on July 20th. This is a Saturday at 11 a.m. Mountain Time. The title is Who is Grace Brown's Mother? Indirect Evidence, and the presenter is Mark Thompson. So this lecture is all about confirming Anne Hayes as Grace Brown's biological mother, and it's a 3-generation study tracing a matrilineal line back to Grace and Grace's great-great-grandmother. Grace was born in England and died in Massachusetts, so she was an immigrant. This will be so fun. Mark is a graduate of our Research Like a Pro with DNA study group and writes the blog Making Family History. We are looking forward to our next Research Like a Pro study group, which begins August 28th. And if you are interested, be sure you register before early bird registration ends on July 31st. We have our peer group leader application on our website. So if you have been through the Research Like a Pro process and would like to lead a small group of peers, then please apply. And we are also looking forward to our Artificial Intelligence Workshop, which is coming up very soon on July 29th through August 1st. You can still register for that, and we are excited to explore AI together and how to use that in our research. And as always, join our newsletter to find out the latest news, what we are doing, what the latest blog posts and videos, podcasts are out there, and for any coupons that we might have available.
Great. Thank you for sharing all those announcements. And now we get to talk about a new DNA tool that came out recently called BanyanDNA. This is really helpful for any instances of multiple relationships, such as double cousins or pedigree collapse in your family tree or the test taker's family tree. And that's kind of the main idea with using this tool. It helps you analyze the amount of DNA that you share with your cousins, especially when you share more than one common ancestor.
Right, and this was created in December of 2023. BanyanDNA is unlike any other tool for genetic genealogy. Not only can it help you identify an unknown parent, grandparent, or great-grandparent, it can alert you to places in your tree where shared DNA does not support the documented relationships. Best of all, it is completely customized to your family, whether you have pedigree collapse, double cousins, or in a future release, endogamy. So we were excited when we saw this come out, and those terms may be a little confusing to some of you, but we did a series on those, and I wrote a blog post called endogamy, pedigree collapse, and multiple relationships. What's the difference and why does it matter? And in that blog post, I shared the example of multiple relationships in my family tree. My great-grandparents, Dot Harris and Alice Fraser, each had a sibling who also married each other. So descendants of these two couples are double cousins.
Right. I remember realizing that marriage happened and that there were a lot of descendants from those couples and how it affected the DNA, and sometimes feeling frustrated that I couldn't isolate those clusters into separate groups.
Right. I was sharing more DNA with these descendants than I should have for the predicted relationship because of this double cousin relationship going back. So it's really neat that with this new tool, BanyanDNA, we can now look at it in a different way and analyze and get some confirmation.
Right. So that's exactly what you did. So you used Banyan DNA, you created a free account to help you analyze these type of relationships. So Banyan DNA allows you to add DNA matches between multiple test takers, which is nice. So you can add in results from your first cousin and yourself and your first cousin once removed. So that's again like another layer of more advanced analysis than what you could have done with like the what are the odds tool.
Exactly. And it is easy to use. I love tools that are easy to use. It is oriented horizontally. So it starts with the ancestors on the left, and then you build their descendancy out to the right. And so I started with John C. Harris and Melissa Welch, who are a set of my second great grandparents. And then I also put in Richard Fraser and Nancy Briscoe, another set of second great grandparents, and their children married each other. So we have Dot Harris, who married Alice Fraser, and Sophia Elmoni Harris, who married Ellis Millard Fraser. So I was able to put in those relationships and show the parents of these two couples that had married siblings. And then from there, I filled out all of their descendants down to the DNA matches and my DNA test takers. And then I was able to enter in how much DNA was shared. And then I could see if this was valid by running the calculation.
One thing I like about this is that the lines are colored. That was always a challenge when we would try to draw this out with Lucid Chart. And so it's nice that the descent line from the Harris family is yellow. So you can clearly see, even though it overlaps, that Doc Harris was the descendant of John C. and Melissa, as well as Sophie Elmoni Harris, because they both have the yellow lines, whereas the Frasers have the blue line. So even though the Harrises married the Frasers twice, so they overlap in the diagram, you can see clearly because of the colored lines.
Exactly. And I love the color. I think the color's fun. And I love the ease of creating this. If you spell somebody's name wrong, you can go edit it. You can, just really easily fix it up if you mess it up at first, which of
Did you
course
mess
you're going to
something up?
do. Well, it was a bit of a learning curve just getting the multiple relationships in. And I did watch the video that gets you started. But, anytime you do something for the first time, you're like, wait, did I do that right? So, of course, I messed it up at first. How can you not?
Oh, just teasing.
Yeah. Well, and it was interesting to check the validity of the relationships. And I couldn't figure that out at first. That was kind of tricky. And we're going to talk about a change that now makes it much easier from when I was working on this right at the beginning. But I put myself in as a hypothesis and ran that. And what you'll get is like little green triangle type things that will say if it's good or if it's not possible at all, you'll get a red. And so, that helps you to know if you're on the right track or not. So BanyanDNA does tell you this about calculations. In BanyanDNA, calculations are statistical evaluations of the DNA match data in your project. The tool will simulate the inheritance of DNA from the earliest ancestors in the tree down to the people with DNA match data. Because DNA inheritance has a random component, BanyanDNA runs these simulations hundreds or thousands of times, called trials, to estimate the expected ranges of shared DNA for each pair of DNA testers. Then it will compare those expected simulated results with the actual shared DNA values to assess how well the DNA data aligns with the tree structure. So you can see it's all based on statistics.
Yeah, that's a lot of statistics, and it sounds a lot like how Ancestry does simulations as well
Yeah.
to get their, estimate of what relationship somebody is when they share DNA.
Right. So it was fun. It was really neat to be able to fill out this double cousin tree and test the relationships because I hadn't been able to do this before. So if you do have, any of you listening, a case of complicated DNA, such as multiple relationships or pedigree collapse, I'd really encourage you to dig into Banyan DNA and see if you can use that to help identify unknown ancestors or to find places in your tree where your shared DNA is either too low or too high for the documented relationship.
Right. I think practicing with a known situation is such a good idea where we already know the ancestors and the matches involved in this double cousin situation. So it's just a good way to get familiar with it. And then when we have another case or question where we think people could be sharing an elevated amount of DNA and we're not sure who the ancestors are for sure, then we kind of have experience using the tool and we know how it works and it will make it easier. So that was such a great idea to try it out.
Well, I always like trying out something with my own family because I understand the relationships and I've done the research and I know that it's correct documentary wise. And I think that helps.
Right. And we've had a few client cases where we've needed a tool like this. So it'll be nice to have it available for the future.
Exactly.
This episode is brought to you by newspapers.com. Discover your mom in the newspaper when you search newspapers.com. Find the stories that made her who she is today by searching the largest online newspaper archive. Newspapers.com makes it easy to find your mom, grandma, and others in the newspapers. Search more than 945 million pages from major news titles to small town papers. Uncover birth and marriage announcements, obituaries, photos, and much, much more. Explore papers dating back to 1690 or as recent as last month. Newspapers.com is used by millions of people every month for genealogy, historical research, and more. Find something you like with newspapers.com. It's a snap to save and share articles with friends and family, or attach them directly to your ancestry tree. Use promo code FamilyLocket for a 20% discount on your subscription. That's code FamilyLocket and celebrate the stories of a lifetime with newspapers.com.
All right. Well, I was excited to see in my inbox a newsletter from Banyan DNA that just came out a bit ago, 19 May 2024. And in this newsletter, it said that Banyan DNA had an update. And I was excited to see this because now you can do your calculations for either validation or hypotheses. So you get to decide which type of calculation to run when performing a new analysis. And I'm so glad they did this because when I first did my Harris double cousin tree, I really just wanted confirmation because I knew where all these people fit and I wanted to see if it made sense statistically with the DNA, but there was no way I could run just a confirmation or a validation. And so I just had to create a hypothesis and then run that. But now you can choose. So that's really nice.
Oh, okay. So just thinking of what I know with what are the odds, where you don't really always know where the person goes. So you put in a few different places for hypotheses and then compare. So
Right.
that's how Banyan DNA was, where you have to put in a hypothesis
Yeah.
and see if that's possible or not, or multiple hypotheses and see which hypothesis gets the highest score.
Right. So I had done that. I've been playing around a little bit with it now since the new update. I had my original hypothesis, which is where I knew it fit, but then I created another hypothesis that I knew wasn't correct just to compare and ran that and got the red for the one that wasn't right and the green for the one I knew was right. So, it's always fun to do something like that. But I like this option of just running validation. And so this is what the update says. It says anyone can do a validation run to check that the DNA matches support the biological tree. You don't need to have a family mystery or to configure any hypotheses. If you do set up hypotheses, the validation run will ignore them and only analyze the other matches. So I thought that was interesting that, just have to know what you're doing. Do you want to have a hypothesis or you just want to put in what you think is right and have it see what it thinks? Gives you validation. So it's fun to try it out and see what's going on with this new update. It also says you can include pairwise match data between any two people in the tree. So if you manage multiple autosomal DNA kits, you can analyze them all at once, which is great because I think a lot of us have extra test takers and have extra kits we can work with.
Yeah, that's exciting because that will be useful in all kinds of cases, not just for cases where you have multiple relationships or pedigree collapse, it's just a tool that anyone can use to analyze their DNA matches.
Exactly. Something else that they wrote in the newsletter was that these hypotheses calculations only consider matches to the person of interest whom you're trying to place in a validated tree. And the person of interest might have an unknown parent or might be descended from someone with an unknown parent. We recommend validating every tree when possible before doing a hypothesis run. So that's really interesting. We have had a lot of projects where it's, oh my goodness, sometimes multiple unknown parents or grandparents. So this would be so nice. I remember one project we had that had pedigree collapse on both sides and like 2 or 3 cases of unknown parentage. That was really crazy to work out.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be super helpful for those types of cases.
That will. I think that's going to be great. And it seems like a small tweak that will make it that much easier for new users to be able to use it.
Right. We should probably also mention just a few basics about Banyan DNA. You can have one tree for free. And if you want to have multiple trees, then you'll need to purchase a subscription to it. So it's really up to you how much work you're always doing with your DNA. And if you want to be saving your trees and working in multiple trees. And I would also mention that they do a Zoom call, open office hours, twice a month, where you can just go on and see people asking questions or Leah and her team demonstrating the tool. So that's also really neat.
Yeah.
They are really committed to helping people.
Yeah, that's a good thing to do. I think it would be good to just try it out and then attend the office hours after you've already tried it, because then you'll have questions and you'll have a framework, to start with for understanding it because you've attempted to use it yourself.
Yeah, you always learn better if you've already experimented with it. Then it will make sense. So I would recommend that anyone listening who's interested in this, just go put in a tree, put in one of your basic trees and your DNA matches, multiple test takers if you have them, and then run the validation and see if you were right. Does it all make sense? So it basically helps us check our work. We can think of it as a fact checker with our
Right.
DNA analysis.
I like what you had said earlier when you were reading that update from their newsletter about they recommend validating every tree before doing a hypothesis run. And that
Mm-hmm.
is so smart because so often the DNA matches trees have a missing generation or they just have incorrect, more distant ancestors. Once people get past ancestors they knew, sometimes they just link up to the wrong people because of inexperience. And so it's just really great to check the sources to validate the parent-child links in their tree before doing your Banyan DNA analysis.
Right. And I can see this could be really helpful if, say, you have someone who shows up in your match list. You don't know how they're connected, but they're a fairly large match, like a few hundred centimorgans. And you maybe have several of you who have taken tests and those cousins have shared their results with you. You can put everybody in and see if you can get some ideas about where this mystery match could actually fit into the family tree. So that's going to happen to all of us. If it hasn't happened to you yet, it will. You'll have somebody show up and you'll have to try to figure out who this person is.
Yeah, well, in the newsletter that came out May 19th, there was an example of how the new changes will improve the speed and the accuracy of Banyan DNA results. So here's kind of an example of how a validation run can help you find some problems in your tree. So here's the example that they gave. Louise shares much less DNA than you would expect for an aunt-niece relationship, which affects the quality of your overall tree. You can now try to correct her placement in the tree or her shared DNA amount with Gloria before you add hypotheses for your person of interest, whose position in this tree you are trying to determine. So that's great to try to correct that error and improve the quality of your tree.
Absolutely. Well, there is another feature that they introduced, and this is where all the relationships between two peoples are now shown in the relationships column, and they have an example of that. And it's a beta feature, which you can use if you're in the premium version. So I think we can look forward to new updates and getting this product even better. So I think it's exciting to be part of something from the very beginning and seeing how it's improved and how we can use it with our DNA.
Great. So they're just taking some of the information from one place and showing it in a different location, it sounds like, to make it more obvious, I guess.
Right.
Well, yeah, this is going to be great. I think using BanyanDNA can really help us analyze our matches and take some of the complicated math analysis out of it for us, and doing those analyses automatically can really speed things up. We worked in our Research Like a Pro with DNA study group a lot with putting in the amount of shared DNA into the shared SunWorking project and just looking at the histograms and putting in two amounts of DNA for people in the same generation level and looking at the standard deviation and all these different metrics to see if the amount of shared DNA is working for the relationship. So BanyanDNA can really help streamline that whole process by taking all of the DNA matches with multiple test takers and putting it all in one place and validating it. So that's exciting.
It is exciting. DNA is so fun. There's always something new and exciting to learn, which is why we enjoy it, and we enjoy teaching it. We enjoy learning, and we hope everyone listening is starting on a journey of DNA, whether you have really dived into your results or not. Just know there's a grand adventure waiting for you when you start working with your DNA.
All right. Well, thanks for sharing your experience with using BanyanDNA. And to everyone out there, have a great week, and we will talk to you again next week.
All right. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you for listening. We hope that something you heard today will help you make progress in your research. If you want to learn more, purchase our books, Research Like a Pro and Research Like a Pro with DNA on Amazon.com and other booksellers. You can also register for our online courses or study groups of the same names. Learn more at FamilyLocket.com/services. To share your progress and ask questions, join our private Facebook group by sending us your book receipt or joining our courses. To get updates in your email inbox each Monday, subscribe to our newsletter at FamilyLocket.com/newsletter. Please subscribe, rate, and review our podcast. We read each review and are so thankful for them. We hope you'll start now to research like a pro.